Welcome to the While You Were Working podcast, presented by Rogue Marketing. When you're responsible for revenue, it's hard to look up from the work. But while you're doing your day job, the market shifts. While You Were Working is where we turn today's trends into tomorrow's strategies. Welcome to While You Were Working.
Welcome to While You Were Working, the podcast for revenue accountable business leaders who want to stay ahead of the curve. I'm Chip Rosales, managing partner of Rogue Marketing. Rogue is a team of business builders with a marketing toolbox, and we're so glad you're joining us. The world moves fast while you're working, and today's guest is someone navigating one of the most fascinating balancing acts in healthcare today, scaling elite talent in a market environment where demand keeps rising and supply keeps shrinking. I'm thrilled to welcome Fahad Kajani, President and Chief Operating Officer at Vision Radiology, a physician-led radiology group focused on delivering high-quality, subspecialty reads and exceptional clinical partnership to healthcare organizations across the country. Vision has built a reputation for attracting radiologists from some of the most premier training programs in the nation. But what's interesting is how they're thinking about growth. They're not just scaling headcount, they're building culture, experimenting with AI and technology, and trying to answer a difficult question facing a lot of industries right now. How do you grow without compromising what made you special in the first place? Fahad, I'm so excited to have you here. So I know I just gave this really high level 50,000 foot description of Vision Radiology, but in your own words, tell me, who is Vision Radiology? What are you?
Sure. We are an academically oriented teleradiology practice. So for some folks, teleradiology still, they're like, what is that, right? And essentially, instead of having a radiologist sitting in the basement of a hospital, which oftentimes that's where it is, our radiologists work from home anywhere they want, and hospitals will send their images to us and their studies to us, and our radiologists will interpret those within 15 minutes and provide an interpretation to the hospitals. And we were founded by two radiologists, Dr. Gautam Agrawal and Ray Su, who trained at Johns Hopkins together. And they had a belief that they wanted to take what are the best radiologists out there, recreate some of their residency experience, and create a collegial, collaborative, high-powered practice. And fast forward 20 some odd years later, and we're up to about 100 radiologists covering 200 or so hospitals across 25 states. So that's really kind of who we are, and it's a culture of just really good people, really caring physicians trying to do right by patients.
Well, let's go backwards in time with the teleradiology. That was a new concept at a point in time. And now it seems like there's a lot of that going on. How has teleradiology evolved, and how are you, how is that impacting what you're doing today?
That's a great question. In my 10 years at Vision alone, I've seen so much change. When I joined, historically, teleradiology was essentially reserved for one component of radiology work, and that was kind of your overnight ER coverage. So basically, shifts that not a lot of radiologists wanted to work unless they had a special need, et cetera, right? And historically, it was plagued by challenges with quality, poor turnaround times, et cetera. And Ray and Gautam came in and said, we're going to revolutionize the space by getting the best radiologists in the world, helping them build a sustainable career, serving this very critical need to hospital systems and patients, right? But for the first 5 or so years, all of our conversations were, we're teleradiology, but we're not what you think, right? And it's, basically trying to dispel all the stereotypes and assumptions that people have about teleradiology. No, we're different. Here's how we're different, right? Then the pandemic hit, and it felt
Suddenly you were hot.
It felt like overnight, right, everyone became teleradiology, right? And teleradiology became kind of a very focal point of the industry where a lot of, I think, radiologists started saying, why am I in the hospital, right? And during the pandemic, I did my job just fine, caring for patients remotely, so there should be a component to that all the time, or at least a significant part of the time, right? And so after the pandemic, I think it's really changed, and each year, I think everyone in some shape or form is becoming teleradiology. Even your local practices, many of them are saying, in order for us to recruit and retain the radiologists we want, we need to have a component to this where they have that flexibility, especially in a time where radiologists are getting crushed, right, in terms of the supply-demand imbalance you talked about earlier. more than anything, I think groups are realizing that it's important to cater to kind of their well-being and their lifestyles. And so I think we're very fortunate in that that's something that was part of our ethos from day one. And now I think you're seeing more and more of the industry realizing that this is, something that's got to continue going forward.
And you're an academic, intelligent place to work. So I know you attract a specific kind of thinker, somebody who's always thinking and so I have to imagine that in a place where you've got talent scarcity, that there's this need to leverage the coolest technologies out there. Obviously, AI is on everybody's lips. So how is Vision leveraging what's happening in the AI space?
Sure. AI and radiology have been, married since before AI was AI, it feels. I remember when I was in talks to join Vision 10 years ago, there were commercials on TV for IBM's Watson, and it was doing a radiologist job. And all my questions in my interview is, am I going to have a job in a few years? Like, according to what I'm seeing on TV, this is going to be obsolete, right? And, the folks at Vision, got a nice chuckle out of that and, said, don't believe
So we're going to have radiologists in the future too? Is that what you're telling me?
We're
hearing it here first?
I am a betting man, and I'm willing to put some money on it.
All right.
But, I think there's no doubt in my mind, and I think in all of our minds, that technology and AI is going to be a critical part of radiology. Given this historic shortage of radiologists, the surging volumes that we're seeing, I don't see that surge in volume slowing down based on just the demographics, the current nature of the radiology and medical space. And unless we're going to start doubling and tripling the amount of radiologists we're training every year, I don't see that imbalance changing, right? So I think the only solution is going to be technology. Now, what I will say is I think there's still a lot of smoke around technology and AI where everyone is screaming it from the rooftops in every industry, right? I think at Vision, we're being very mindful about how we approach it. We are serious believers that this is going to be the key to the future, but we're also being very mindful of not just jumping in head first into, the next kind of bell or whistle that we hear, right?
So let's explore that just a little bit. Lean into your business side. You've got responsibility for the scale and the revenue that comes in through Vision. When you're evaluating tech investments like AI or maybe even other tech investments that you're doing, how do you decide between what is just interesting versus what is actually viable for the business?
I think, it actually is really simple in that the radiologists have to be the ones who are making that decision, right? I think you have technology companies out there that are, touting some great capabilities. Each one has their own level of clinical, influence in the development of their product. But then even radiology practices, right? Like your radiologists have to be the one who are taking a hard look at this. And so we have a team of radiologists who, as part of their time, spend regularly evaluating all these different technologies that are out there and just in general evaluating our practice and what makes the biggest impact, right? So there's some great technology out there and we're using it, but we're also being mindful of how we use it. And so when we go through and we test it, our radiologists are asking and looking like, does this make sense? Is this making me more efficient? Is this accurate? Or is this actually not serving the purpose that I need? Or is it serving it in a great enough capacity, right? And each time we learn very interesting things. And I think that's one of the great things about our practice is that we have these incredible radiologists who are not just great radiologists, but they are, computer science majors. They've written textbooks. They have this curiosity and this knowledge. And then they're approaching it with the lens of, let's see how this works in our practice, right? And that's the big thing is that you've got to find the technology that can work in your practice. And so for us, we're fortunate that we have such an incredible cross-section of patients that we see, right, across 25 states, different demographics, ER, outpatient, academic centers, et cetera. And so we're able to see such a wide range of data and then see how these technologies work in those environments. And then we'll have a great collaboration with these companies and say, here's what we're seeing. And they actually learn from us a ton. And so it's like this mutually beneficial kind of collaboration where we're trying to see how to implement it into our practice, but also teaching them how it can make their product better to suit other practices, right?
You have like an entire business of very curious people, and I love that. I think that's a hallmark. I'm wondering, beyond technology, what else are you experimenting with? How's that vision getting out there and that lifelong learning? How else are you experimenting?
That's a good question. I think we're looking at a lot of different things, right? And as you scale, I think an organization runs into different challenges, different kind of issues, right? And so, one, we're constantly experimenting with how do we continue scaling a fully remote organization, right? We have 150 between clinical and operational, 150 some odd employees, all remote, right? How do you maintain that culture? And that is probably one of the most critical things that drives vision and has brought it to this point, is that culture. And it's remarkable that we've done it in a fully remote environment to this point. And now the question is, how do we continue to do it, right? So every aspect of what we do and what we look at is how do you scale and maintain that, right? And we're not willing to compromise on that culture. And so it's finding creative ways to bring the teams together, either virtually or in person, right? So I think even though being either an employee in operations or a teleradiologist at Vision is the least lonely environment, telehealth environment, I feel confident about that virtually. But we're realizing that why stop there, right? So we're looking at, we've started these regional meetups with our radiologists where we have clusters of them around the country. And from, feedback we get from them, they love the virtual interaction, but they say, I'd love to hang out in person, right? So we find ways to do kind of meetups regionally. G and I flew out to Seattle a few weeks ago to play pickleball with our Seattle radiologist group, right? Different things like that to bring them together. We're sending our radiologists to various World Cup matches, right? And I think that adds a whole different level and fills a different need that even though we are a very collaborative remote practice, how do you bring that into the real world? So that's a big area we focus on, continuing to look at how do we continue to allow our radiologists to have that flexibility and sustainability in their schedules. We're in a world where the demands of radiologists are just growing and growing, where at the end of the day, there's patients that need to be cared for, and looking at how do we do that in a way that still allows our radiologists to maintain their work-life balance, right? And so how you schedule the clients you bring on, what you expect of your clients, all these different things, I think, play a huge role in it.
I think getting the answers to those questions is probably on the minds of every industry right now. Everybody's trying to figure out how to do that. And so I love that you guys are experimenting in those ways. Well, as we wrap up our time here, just kind of talking about the practice, what is the current vision for Vision? Like, so if you were to cast the vision out there, somebody asked you, how would you describe the current vision for Vision Radiology?
Sure. I would say the vision for Vision is to be laser focused on this being a permanent home for radiologists to build sustainable, fulfilling, meaningful careers while being able to balance their personal and professional life. And what that looks like, I think, is the big $1 million question right now in this world of the supply and demand shortage, technology, et cetera. So I think it's continuing to maintain our culture, being a patient radiologist first culture. And really, I think if you have that solidified, and then it's how do you take technology and really set yourself up for the long term. And that's, I think, where we're laser focused.
Sounds like you guys are well on your way. So
That's
I'm excited to hear that. Well, we've now come to my favorite part of the podcast, where I do something called quick takes. And the idea is I'm just going to ask you some random questions, and I'm just looking for a real quick reaction on that. So just a quick answer, and you don't have to pontificate too much. But
okay.
So what's one thing you do every day as a leader?
Express gratitude.
I love it. How about the most underrated trait you've found in a great radiologist?
Oh, that's a good question. I know this is rapid fire. I'd say curiosity.
Curiosity. Okay. You've talked about this being like a family group, and so what's a work family tradition that you're proud of?
A work family tradition I am proud of. Our operations summits. Every year we bring the entire operations team together in a different city to connect in person and really ground ourselves in our mission.
Okay. What's one thing that healthcare overcomplicates?
Everything.
Good enough. How about the greatest piece of advice you got as a leader?
If you focus on the people, the rest will work itself out.
All right. And last one, my favorite one. What's a book, a podcast, or a resource you just swear by?
You're going to laugh at this, but I'm going to go with the Smart List podcast. There's something about it that I'm not a huge podcast guy, but the Smart List podcast can take me away from anything that's on my mind and literally have me in my car by myself just laughing and learning about interesting people.
All right. Well, that's amazing. I think you are one of their many millions of fans. What's one thing, or what's something that a radiologist should be looking for in a fruitful career?
There's probably a ton of things that are going through their minds right now, especially in this environment. The greatest career advice that I ever received, and I pass it on as gospel and try to take credit for it, but it's been passed down to me, is that when you're kind of looking at your professional life or a career opportunity, there's so many thoughts that go through your mind, right? What's the growth path? What's the comp? What's my work-life balance? All these things. But you can really boil it down to 3 buckets: joy, meaning, and wealth. And by kind of synthesizing it into those 3 buckets, it makes the decision a lot easier, right? So your joy can be your work-life balance, et cetera, right? Your meaning is, are you challenged? Are you growing? Do you have an opportunity to contribute? And your wealth is your wealth, right? And for different people, they put a different weight on each of those buckets. And for any individual at different points in your career, those buckets weigh differently, right? Once upon a time, I was an investment banker, and I cared about, the meaning, which was I was learning a ton and working on important things, and I was making good money right out of college, right? I was also working, 100+ hour weeks, but at that point in time in my career, it was not about the joy, and it was those other 2 things, and that's where I was deriving my joy from, right? You have other folks who, could be a starving artist, right, where this is your passion and you love it, and so maybe in those early days, right, the wealth isn't there, but your joy and your meaning and your purpose, they're all there. And so I think at different stages of your career, if you reflect and say, what's important to me? How are these buckets filled today? Which one's kind of lacking? Which one's overflowing? I think it helps you solve that equation. And so that's what I would say is, as you're looking at a professional opportunity as a radiologist, whether you're out of training or a mid-career radiologist, I would think about those 3 buckets, and right now and for the near future, kind of where you place that importance on those buckets.
Excellent. All right. Well, we appreciate you being here. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Today's conversation touched on something a lot of leaders in healthcare, and frankly, every high-trust industry is wrestling with right now. How do you embrace AI without losing trust? A recent Marketing Profs article explored exactly that. That piece looked at how generative AI is being adopted in industries where credibility, expertise, and human confidence matter deeply. Industries like healthcare, finance, and legal. And one of the biggest takeaways was this: AI works best when it amplifies expertise, not when it replaces it. The organizations that are winning with AI aren't just chasing automation. They're using technology to improve speed, consistency, workflows, and communication, while still keeping highly skilled experts at the center of the experience. They know what AI is for and not for. AI is a strategy, not an abdication. They have identified the pattern you need your AI to follow. The article also pointed out that trust becomes the differentiator. As AI-generated content and automation becomes more common, buyers and clients increasingly ask, who do I trust to interpret this correctly? Who do I trust when the stakes are high? That's especially relevant in healthcare, where speed matters, but confidence and accuracy matter more. And maybe the biggest lesson for CROs and marketing leaders listening today is this: don't market AI as the hero. Market what your people can do because of AI. That's where trust, differentiation, and long-term value are built. A link to the article is posted in the show notes. We'd also invite you to follow us on social media. Search Rogue Marketing on Facebook and X, or Rogue Marketing Agency on LinkedIn. We're regularly sharing insights and articles that you may have missed, while you were working. See you next time.